James Mulley Jr. in Penfield Town Court. The name of this YouTube is The Most Dangerous Branch. Why do you think it's called The Most Dangerous Branch? It's a simple answer. You should know the answer. Because a judge anywhere in the United States of America can destroy life. And that's what you're in the business of doing on Penfield Town Court with Paul C. Metzler and your disgusting, vile hack predecessor, John P. Lomenzo Jr. Are you aware of the facts and circumstances of the case of Dan DeLaus III? And how John P. Lomenzo Jr. is a child rapist protection racket for Dan DeLaus III? And he doesn't recuse himself from the case of Dan DeLaus III even though he knows the family? So, I'm going to contact the United States Department of Justice about everything I say in this YouTube, because I'm on a relentless quest to see that you, James Mulley Jr. and Paul C. Metzler, are removed from Penfield Town Court and sent into forced retirement and humiliation, shame, and disgrace. So, James Mulley Jr., does the name Jessica Wagner ring a bell in that diseased cranium of yours? It should. Because Jessica Wagner is no longer employed at the district attorney's office, because I have the payroll here, and when I acquired, I went right to the W's to see what she's paid. She's not on the payroll. I don't know why she's no longer employed at the district attorney's office, but you know her. You know her because of Jermaine Benman. I'm going to tell you about the concoction of two crimes, and they're still concocting crimes for me. There's a guy named Steve Desmond of Broccoli Tree in lawn care, walking along a guy in his tractor, because Shannon Meyer of the Monroe County Sheriff's Office told this guy, get on your tractor, go by Chris Chichester's residence, get him to come by his house, and we're going to be there immediately. This is what they're doing at the Sheriff's Office, these disgusting, repulsive, corrupt hacks that work for Todd Baxter. Tell me how this is a crime. Here comes the guy in his tractor. I haven't been here for 7 years. Then no one owns that land, and no one owns that land. Here's the guy in his tractor. He's Steve Desmond of Broccoli Tree in lawn care. He's got his phone in his hand because he wants me to come out of his house. They're not cutting grass that day. They're trying to get me to come out of the house. Here's the guy in his tractor. Come outside. I stand here. I tell the guy in his tractor, no one owns the land. I go back into my residence. How's that a crime, James Mulley Jr.? How's that a crime that delivers 6 Monroe County Sheriff Office employees, these fanatics, degenerates, sociopaths that work for Todd Baxter, to my residence? I see Shannon Meyer of the Monroe County Sheriff's Office fall down in her face. There she is, laying in my backyard dirt. Then I hear the pounding on my front door. I go outside and answer the door. I am told, we just want to talk to you outside. Meyer runs around to the front. She's perspiring. She looks like a total train wreck. I walk out of my front and only ceramic handcuffs go on. How is that possibly a crime? How is that a crime, James Mulley Jr.? The answer is that that's not a crime. And there's the ticket for it. They took me to the jail, handcuffed me inside the jail. I couldn't reach the urinal. I urinated on myself. Then they let me out late at night, and I ran home in the midnight air. That's not a crime, James Mulley Jr. Just like harassment second, well, I'm not harassing anyone. The only person I can be guilty of harassing is Jermaine C. Benyon Jr. Jr. What's the name Jermaine C. Benman mean to you as you sit there destroying lives in your library courtroom? Jermaine C. Benman and Jessica Wagner. You know those names. I'm going to tell you what happened to me at the now defunct PW Fitness across from Wegmans in Penfield. Tell me who I'm harassing. I'm going to tell you this as concisely as I can. I've said this repeatedly on YouTube. I don't know who watches it. Perhaps you've seen it. I don't know. I'm at the back of the gym on the bench press. Up walks to me Jermaine C. Benman. He goes like that. I say to this psychopath, I'll be 30 seconds. I lean back on the bench press. He stands over me. He punches down. My head snaps back violently. A witness calls the Monroe County Sheriff's Office, and $79,000 Andrew Reale arrives. And when Andrew Reale arrives, he sees it's me. And Andrew Reale has been to my residence because of this parking lot. And I have talked to him repeatedly, telling him I never committed a crime. That's not a crime. I've said this to him. My exact words to him were, Andrew, that's not a crime. And there's nothing from him because he's a Jonestown Kool-Aid drinker. So my head snaps back violently. James Mulley Jr. I'm on the bench press. You follow me here, bald-headed, wig-wearing Paul Metzler, too? He walks away. I had to decide right away not to attack him and bring him to the ground, exact violence and vengeance upon him. That's exactly what I should have done. For the first time in my life, I should have attacked another human being to prevent what's going to happen to me when $79,000 Andrew Reale arrives and decides to put the screws to me. We go outside. Andrew Reale tells me to wait in the back seat of his Monroe County Sheriff's Office vehicle. James Mulley Jr., from the time I was on the bench press about to begin the exercise until I was sitting in the back seat of Andrew Reale's Monroe County Sheriff's Office vehicle, what's the name of the human being on planet Earth I'm harassing? Think about that. Can you think? Can you function at your age? I'm in the back seat. Andrew Reale talks to Jermaine Bettman in front of the vehicle. I'm looking out the window to the Monroe County Sheriff's Office because Andrew Reale just told Jermaine Bettman what to say to me. He walks Jermaine Bettman around the side of the vehicle, and Jermaine C. Bettman says to me, I want to press charges against you. I want to press charges against you. See that? Those 7 words? Do you understand those 7 words? James Mulley Jr., that's how I'm charged with harassing. Second, James Mulley Jr., what's the name of the human being I'm harassing? The answer to that question is I'm not harassing anyone. And I was in jail for this. What would you think if somebody in your life, someone you love or like, is charged with harassment second sitting in the backseat of a Monroe County Sheriff's Office vehicle? So, this is not a crime that says criminal contempt. This is not a crime that says harassment second, because I'm not harassing anyone. I said this to Andrew Reale. Who's the victim? If I'm hypothetically guilty of harassment second, there's a victim. What's that person's name? Because the only victim that I am harassing is Jermaine C. Bettman. And since this violent thug and criminal snapped my head back, there is no victim, and this is the concoction of a crime. Criminal contempt second, when I'm outside of all of 30 seconds, there's no way for me to commit any type of crime when I exit my front door, stand on Sanders Farm Drive where I've lived for 7 years, look at a guy in his tractor, tell him nobody owns that land and walk back to my house. That's not criminal contempt second. That's not a crime in any manner, shape, or form. I was in jail for both of these. That's why I will never go into Penfield Town Court. Do you understand me, bald-headed, wig-wearing Paula Metzler? This extremist that you're with is in her little library courtroom. She decides I should go to jail and summons me, and I'm supposed to present myself in front of her and allow her to declare me guilty and for me to go to jail. This is the sick lunatic fringe that you're with. You are the sick lunatic fringe on Penfield Town Court. There are times where I come here to YouTube and I have a nauseousness that starts inside me that I have to control when I'm off YouTube. Because I'm using this communication device owned by Google to remove you from Penfield Town Court. And you will have received the transcript from what I say, not only to this one, but for every YouTube. And there are now 50 plus that I've been doing. I believe I have over 100,000 words, perhaps even 200,000 words that I've said on YouTube. So, give me an idea, the sick hack you work with. This is a search warrant. That's not a search warrant. Paula Metzler, this is not a search warrant. I've been saying this to you relentlessly. You type this in Penfield Town Court. This is what I'm going to tell the United States Department of Justice, the Office of Andrew Cuomo, the United States Committee on the Judiciary at the House of Representatives and at the United States Senate. I'm going to tell them, staffers, that you type this search warrant in Penfield Town Court. It has no identifying marker. How could this possibly be a search warrant? Government documents, especially a search warrant to get into the residence of a citizen, have identifying markers. It says no identifying marker, Paula Metzler. This is your confirmation of your sick, repulsive existence. And then, because you wrote on here, any laptops, computers, or tablets that you can take out of here, Leela Roque exited with my Chromebook. Why does Leela Roque have my Chromebook? She's reading my emails. You empowered this $91,000 vile sick hack, Leela Roque, to come in here and take my Chromebook. And she left her blue gloves behind. He pulled out the 4 drawers on my father's dresser that he gave me from when he was a child in Brooklyn. And going through my father's dresser, I had papers and folders next to my laptop that I put on the floor. There were 500 papers thrown on the floor. The cabinets underneath the sink were pulled out. My dress green military uniform that I have not worn since 1988 in the 101st Airborne Division, Air Assault Fort Campbell, Kentucky, was thrown on the floor upstairs. This is the demented, psychotic existence of Lee LaRoque and the employees at the Monroe County Sheriff's Office taking my dress screens that looked the same way the last time I wore them at the last payroll ceremony in 1988, where I was awarded an Army Commendation Medal for service. I have now worn that uniform for 32 years, and that was on the floor in the spare bedroom. That uniform should never be on the floor, and I believe every veteran would agree that dress screen should never be on the floor. It reminds me of that day, that perfect day when I was done, when I was short time, when I was getting to the end, and I was going to drive home to Long Island. I was so happy. And there my uniform is on the floor. My military uniform, my dress screens from 2nd Squadron, 17th Cavalry, 101st Airborne Division, Air Assault, Fort Campbell, Kentucky, are on the floor because of this search warrant. That's not a search warrant because Leo LaRoque took the uniform out of the closet and put it on the floor. So, have you been to Forest Grove Court, Penfield, New York? It's John P. Lorenzo Jr. refused to open his mail. I'm demanding documentation for the Dan Glaus III case. You have files in Penfield Town Court. I want to see these documents he called defective. It's a child rapist he released, accused child rapist, pardon me. I want to see these documents that he called defective to the Democrat and Chronicle. Steve Desmond, this is the guy that Todd Baxter, civilian, that was used to get to my residence. He doesn't want to open his mail because he knows I'm accusing him of working in concert with this disgusting hack Shannon Meyer at the Sheriff's Office, cocked crime for me. And perhaps you recognize this name. This is a Todd Baxter. Refused to open his mail. I had to demand payroll 50 plus times before I acquired it. Todd Baxter, Sheriff of Monroe County, is afraid to open his mail from me. And the reason why they're doing this to me is I acquired the payroll. That's the payroll. The Monroe County Sheriff's Office. I'll say this again. This is the payroll of the District Attorney's Office, where a District Attorney, Assistant District Attorney doesn't talk in Penfield Town Court. How am I delivered to jail, Paula Metzler, James B. Mulley Jr., when prosecutor doesn't talk in Penfield Town Court? How does that explain to the United States Department of Justice, the Office of Andrew Cuomo, reporters and editors of the Democrat and Chronicle, I'll also be in contact with? This is blank. This is a Freedom of Information law that is blank that I'm going to send to you. I want the documentation for the Jermaine C. Bettman case. I want to see your signature, James B. Mulley Jr., on documentation, and I'm going to demand using the instrument that's the Freedom of Information law. Is your answer that you don't have documentation for Jermaine C. Bettman? In order to provide this violent thug with his freedom, there is documentation. And your response, James P. Mulley Jr., is you're going to refuse to comply. And your response is again be confirmation of what a joke you are in a court refusing to comply with the law. So you're going to refuse to comply with documentation I want to see about defective documents for Dan Glaus III. You're going to refuse to comply with the documentation, the certification you allowed this violent thug, Jermaine Bettman, to go out of Penfield Town Court. I'm also going to use the Freedom of Information law upon you, Paul C. Metzler, to see how you acquired my healthcare records, which is detailed in numerous YouTubes I've had on here, previous YouTubes, pardon me. You had my healthcare records right in front of you, Paul Metzler. How is that possible? Explain. The employees at the State Department of Health in Albany and employees at the Federal Department of Health and Human Services in Washington, D.C. Hatred and fanaticism. Lady Kumar and Neeraj Shah are in this building at 2041 Penfield Road, coming to Penfield Town Court because I've seen them in there. I'm going to give you an example of these parasites coming to you with these concocted charges for me. Why can you, James P. Mulley Jr., walk through his parking lot without being arrested? Why can you, Paul C. Metzler, walk through his parking lot without being arrested? Because I had the same 14th Amendment right that you, James P. Mulley Jr., and you, Paul C. Metzler, had. You won't be arrested. If you left your little library courtroom, walked down Bad Road, made a left on Penfield Road, walked through his parking lot, and you did that every day, you would not be arrested. I would be arrested. This is the sick lunatic fringe. I've seen you in there, Paul Metzler, talk to these parasites. I've seen you in there. What are you doing talking to Layla Kumar and Neeraj Shah in Penfield Town Court, Paul Metzler? Is this collusion with Neeraj Shah and Layla Kumar Shah to concoct the crime for me? Are you colluding with Neeraj Shah and Layla Kumar Shah? In all seriousness, what the fuck are you doing talking to these two parasites, Paula C. Metzler in Penfield Town Court, Layla Kumar Shah and Neeraj Shah, about me? Because you're concocting crimes for me, and in your demented, sick determination to deposit me in jail. I will never appear in Penfield Town Court, Paul C. Metzler and James P. Mulley Jr. Give you an example of the sickness of Todd Baxter, these fanatics, degenerates, sociopaths. I went to Lollipop Farm Humane Society in 2012. My ex-girlfriend, Laura Riley, because we decided to adopt a dog. Guess where Laura Riley worked? James P. Mulley Jr. The Penfield Public Library. And I remember being in the Penfield Public Library talking to Laura about how we wanted to adopt a dog. One of the times I went over there because I was thinking about our trip to Lollipop. And I walked in there, and as I don't know, Penfield Town Court is at the end of that hallway. I opened the door to talk to Laura. And I remember talking to her about how excited we were to go to Lollipop and how we're going to be there. We wanted to adopt a dog. And we approved, and that's him. Mo and I were so happy to adopt him that day. We went to the cages, and we were standing there, and Laura said to me, "He's looking right at you." He was really looking at both of us, but that's just the way she talks. And we adopted him. We signed the paperwork. And when we were asked, I'm not telling you my dog story. I'm telling you this because we were asked, "Do you have a prior criminal record? Have you ever been arrested?" The answer from both of us is no. And to this day, I have never committed a crime. So, I'm demanding how Todd Baxter disciplines employees. This is the fanaticism and the corruption of these degenerates that have to appear in front of you and that concocting charges for innocent citizens. The internal disciplinary records of documentation for the Monmouth County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Todd K. Baxter, that Sheriff Todd K. Baxter is reprimanded, terminated, disciplined employment in the Monmouth County Sheriff's Office. He refuses to comply, and also for Sandra Dorley. A prosecutor that doesn't talk in court, they won't even tell me the name. The internal disciplinary records of documentation employees at Monmouth County District Attorney's Office, District Attorney Sandra Dorley, that District Attorney Sandra Dorley is reprimanded, disciplined, and terminated from Penfield Town, from employment at Monmouth County District Attorney's Office. They won't even tell me the name. So, in the military, the reason why I read that is to emphasize it again. In the military, there's the Article 15. There's the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and soldiers that are in violation of it, that breach the code, are punished. And I believe there's no disciplinary process at the Sheriff's Office and District Attorney's Office because Todd Baxter and Sandra Dorley do whatever the hell they want as they bridge the civil and constitutional rights of innocent citizens like me and you, James P. Mulley Jr., have bridged the civil and constitutional rights of an innocent citizen, and that innocent citizen is me. So, one of the reasons why they're doing what they're doing to me in the concoction of crimes, I'm ridiculing them, him, this bald-headed party-switching fraud Todd Baxter on YouTube, like when he said I have a passion for jails. I leave my residence one day on August 29th. 2 Monroe County Sheriff Office employees are hiding in the bushes. Paul Master, you know their names because you're sitting right in front of him. What's the name of these 2 Monroe County Sheriff Office employees that were hiding in the bushes? I walk along the side of my residence to go to Wegmans. Here they come running at me from the private property of my 72-year-old neighbor. I don't know what that is. I turn around. The body camera goes on. I run away, run up at my back porch. One of them grabs my arm. I pull away. I run back into my residence after I just grabbed the hammer alongside my residence because I'm being chased. How's that a crime? I'm demanding from Todd Baxter that he disclosed the names of these 2 employees. They were sitting right there in front of you, Paul Metzer, so you know the names. Paul Metzer, click reply and tell me the names of these 2 Monroe County Sheriff's Office employees who concocted a felony for me on my back porch by lying and saying I swung a hammer at each of them. If I wanted to swing a hammer at someone, it would be in self-defense. And if I did swing a hammer at someone in self-defense, I would bring the hammer down on the head of that person, and it would cause serious neurological damage in the short term for that person. I have never swung a hammer at anyone. I've never engaged in violence with anyone. You have to work with these Jonestown degenerates at the Monroe County Sheriff's Offices. They concoct crimes for innocent citizens, and they were right there in front of you, Paul. And that's so when I made that appearance in Penfield Town Court, and I'm confident you were totally oblivious as to how they concocted a felony for me on my back porch. My name is Christopher Chichester. I have never committed a crime.